So for our project, we wanted to talk about the psychological disorders behind Disney movies. And the two movies that we wanted to focus on was Alice in Wonderland and Winnie the Pooh. So just a little bit of background on why Disney movies include these disorders or diseases is because they want people of all ages to feel like they have some sort of relation to their movies, even the people with disorders, and even though they're not said exclusively, they're hinted at, and psychologists have even gone in and been able to diagnose the characters based on the symptoms that they exhibit. Disney wants, like I said, those children to feel included in what they do in like the movies that they put out. And a lot of times people dealing with these disorders tend to get a feeling of lonesomeness, and they're able to relate with these characters even if they're animated in a different way because they're dealing with what they're dealing with. And they don't want people to minimize the feelings and kind of dismiss these disorders. They want to make them more normalized and be able to talk about them. So in Alice in Wonderland, the bunny exhibits symptoms of general anxiety disorder because he is always worried about the time, and he wants to be punctual, and he kind of freaks out if they're running a tad late or anything. So based on that, they diagnose him with general anxiety disorder. The caterpillar has grandiose delusion, which is a disorder from over-inflicted sense of worth with power, knowledge, or identity. And the person might even believe that he or she has a talent or made an important discovery. And psychologists kind of mentioned that it was shown more when he was prophesizing to Alice, when she was in that scene where he's constantly blowing the hookah, and it shows his sense of superiority. Alice has paranoid schizophrenia, and that's a withdrawal from reality and more of like investing her relationship in with fantasy. And she has become such like a prominent character with people dealing with this disorder that they even named a disorder after her to make it more to relate it, I guess, more to make it more real, so people have an actual concept of what that looks like. And that's called the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which has a play on this, doesn't really deal with schizophrenia, but when people think of her, they think of schizophrenia, and they also think of her misperception of size, which they didn't really have a name for that, so they kind of just ended up calling it the Alice in Wonderland syndrome in that scene where she's like eating the tea cakes and she grows bigger or she grows smaller. So that's what they ended up naming over, because people do experience that misperception of size. And the Mad Hatter has bipolar and post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has a disease named after him also, just to essentially like make it more of a real thing, and so people are once again able to connect, oh, that means that, or that means that relates to that. So his disease is called the Mad Hatter disease, obviously, but it was diagnosed and kind of synonymous with the chronic mercury poisoning, which made when people ingested mercury, they kind of went like delusional and crazy, so they named it after the Mad Hatter, which was seen as delusional and insane. So the next movie, that Winnie the Pooh, is almost essentially all the characters pretty much has disorders. And so Winnie the Pooh has ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and he has OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, due to his fixation on the honey and repetitively counting it. Piglet has generalized anxiety disorder. Rabbit has narcissism. Eeyore has dysemic disorder, which is like a persistent depressive disorder. Owl has dyslexia. Tigger has ADHD, once again, with his incapability of being able to sit still and always having to be on the move and the constant energy. Kanga has social anxiety disorder, and that's seen because she never wants to leave her home. She always lets Rue go out, but she wants to stay behind because she doesn't really like interacting with others unless she absolutely needs to. Rue has autism, and Christopher Robin shows signs of schizophrenia because he is constantly talking to these animals and envisioning himself in their world, and envisioning them as very realistic characters and people that he's actually in relations with. And so the effect that these disorders have today is they're all very real and continue to be present, and some of them do grow, like depression, ADHD. Ones like those have become very popular and very well known in the medical field. And there are some medications for certain disorders, but most of them continue to be a lifelong battle that even while on medications, it doesn't completely go away, but it's able to manage it. And also a statistic that I found was most of these disorders have been proven to be a cause of homelessness and poverty, or even while someone's out on the streets or experiencing poverty, it makes it worse, or sometimes they do catch these disorders, or they're slowly turning themselves insane because of the situation they're in. But yeah, a lot of the times these disorders are associated with people in poverty and people experiencing homelessness.